Hey, welcome to Beyond Organic Wine. I'm Adam Huss. Thank you so much for listening. This episode features audio from the Embracing Hybrid Grapes conference that took place at UC Davis on January 26, 2026. This episode is available for paid subscribers to the Beyond Organic Wine Substack. You can subscribe and listen to the full audio on the Substack app or at beyondorganicwine.substack.com. And a huge thanks to those of you who already subscribe and make this and all the other content at Beyond Organic Wine possible. I couldn't do it without you. The first part of this episode features Adam Tolmach of the Ojai Vineyard in Ojai, California. Adam is one of California's wine icons and has made beautiful and successful wines from the Ventura and Santa Barbara regions since the 1980s. And Adam is one of the early adopters of the hybrid grape varieties that were bred by UC Davis to be tolerant to Pierce's disease. Adam tells his story and gives us an introduction to the delicious wines he makes with these hybrids that we got to taste at Embracing Hybrid Grapes. Adam's hybrids represent the huge diversity that is encompassed when we use the word hybrid. The grapes he grows and makes wine from are 97% vinifera, merely bred to have Pierce's disease resistance. He still has to spray them as much as the vinifera he grows on his other sites. I then give a bit of an introduction to why Pierce's disease is a serious concern and why developing grapes with resistance to it are so important. No vinifera varieties have the genetic ability to tolerate PD and are all therefore susceptible to death in areas where PD is endemic. And those areas are growing and spreading north. In some ways, Pierce's disease is very similar to phylloxera, but you can't use grafting to prevent vine death. When growing vinifera where Pierce's disease occurs, the methods of preventing it are much more extreme, ecologically destructive, and toxic to human health and well-being. PD is one of the main reasons why herbicides and insecticides are used so much in vinifera and other non-adapted viticulture in areas where it occurs. Finally, we get to hear Christopher Renfro's keynote. I won't say too much, but Chris takes us on his journey to come to a vision for the future of wine with hybrids. This journey started with some chance mentions and meetings and led through a deep dive into his heritage and the history of America. His presentation is like an acknowledgments list of the people who brought him to this moment in his life, full of gratitude for the responsibility that has been entrusted to him to continue this story. As I introduced Chris, I mentioned a wine he shared the night before the conference at a dinner with over a dozen folks, including several of the conference speakers. It was a wine that changed, I want to say, everything that I think about wine. It was the last bottle of a wine Chris and others made in 2021 with the 280 Project and some of the UC Davis Viticulture and Enology Department, not for commercial use. In my intro, I said it was made of 4 wild grapes, but I misspoke. A blend of 6 native wild North American species of Vitis, Arizonica, Californica, Giardiana, Labrusca, Monticola, and Riparia. This wine was beyond hybrid and really beyond amazing. These weren't even hybrid grapes. There was 0 vinifera in this wine. It showed me how little I know of the winemaking potential of our own local grapes here in the U.S. and how much we have to discover. It represented the exciting and even hopeful opportunity we have to create a unique grape wine culture from our own grapes. And it threw down the gauntlet for anyone who thinks we need vinifera to have quality wine. We tasted this wine side by side with 2 beautifully made European wines from Cabernet Sauvignon and Garnacha. And the Wild American wine with 0 vinifera made in carboys as an amateur experimental project stood up as equal in quality and deliciousness. And this was the consensus of the over a dozen tasters who tried it. A big thank you to Chris for sharing this eye-opening wine and for becoming the caretaker of our Embracing Hybrid Grapes conference sign. And a big thank you to Adam for sharing his equally yummy hybrid wines from the complete other end of the spectrum in terms of inclusion of vinifera genetics. These two showed that there's room for everyone in the great, big, delicious smorgasbord of hybrid grapes. Enjoy. And now, I would love to welcome Adam Tolmach, who's going to guide us through these and give you a little bit of his story for his wine number 2 and number 3 up here.
You. Well, the history. Okay, so first off, Ojai is a place, a town in Southern California. And so if you think of Santa Barbara and you think of Los Angeles, we're sort of in between there. We're inland from Ventura by about 8.5 miles as the crow flies. And I originally planted a vineyard there in 1981 to Syrah and mostly Sauvignon Blanc. And it quickly showed signs of Pierce's disease. I was young and stupid and didn't read my history books, so I didn't realize that this was a potential problem, but it was. And so by 95, the vineyard was pretty devastated, and we pulled it out. And I met up with Andy Walker because a group of friends, I went to UC Davis, and a group of friends knew Andy, and I didn't really know him, but I ended up going to a few of his wine tastings. He'd worked for 20 years, taking various Vitis vinifera grapes and crossing them with Vitis arizonica being the one that native that carries Pierce's resistance. And Andy kind of believes that traditional plant breeding really is the way to go because, if you do GMO and you just grab like one gene and plug it into a Vitis vinifera vine, that you really won't get the long-term resistance because when you do traditional plant breeding, you're taking a whole chunk of the genome into this new cross that you're making. And I thought that was a pretty valid point. Anyway, he took the first cross and then backbreeded it with vinifera again and again and again until he got to 97% vinifera. This is for someone who likes vinifera. I personally like vinifera a lot, and I grew up on French wine and Burgundy and the Rhone wines and enjoy them a lot. And I'm not really trying to imitate anybody. I think what I got off on French wine was the interest in making wines that taste like they're from a particular spot. And so the thing that really grabbed me in winemaking was that you could go to two vineyards, and this happened early on in my winemaking. I remember distinctly in 1988, Jim Clendenin and I were making wine together at the time, and we had Pinot Noir from a vineyard, Bien Nacido vineyard, people have probably heard of that. And then we had Pinot Noir from a little teeny vineyard that was right across the street. And granted, the soils were different and the exposure was a little different, but the wines were radically different. And I really think that's wonderful about wine is that it can express a particular spot. And so that's what we're trying to do with Ojai. And after we lost our vineyard, we planted Andy's grapes in 2017. Sorry, missed a few decades there. And the vines, there's something called hybrid vigor, and they definitely have that. You make this cross, and the vines grow super well. Yeah, exactly, and so we have vines with vigor, and at the time I had no idea what I was doing with these new vines. I had seen them grow here at Davis, but like every vinifera vine, they're all different. I mean, Nebbiolo in particular is a weird-looking grapevine, and these are all just as equally different from each other, and that's pretty fun. And then on the winemaking end, we had no idea of what we were dealing with, and that also was a real thrill to try to take what was there and try to figure out what can we make out of this. And And so I've really had a really great time. And so since 2019, we've been making these wines. You have the 24 white and 23 red, I believe, in your glasses. One thing I'll add to all that is that the distinctiveness of Spot is really quite interesting, because we have planted, besides our place in Ojai, I have a small vineyard in the Santa Rita Hills near the town of Lompoc in the Central Coast. And in one low-lying area that's really prone to Pierce's disease, we planted these same varieties. And it's amazing to see how radically different they are. I mean, they taste sort of like the same varietals, but they have a really, for instance, the Paciente Noir, the red that we deal with, in Ojai, it's explosively tannic, and we have to really work winemaking wise to keep it under control, while the fruit from Santa Rita Hills is soft and has better acidity, but it has like a softness of tannins, and so that's been really fun to see that as well. I don't know. We'll leave it at that.
I should have given Adam more of an introduction. Thank you very much. You can feel free to sit down. Just in the sense that he has, he started Aubin Clement back in the 80s. He's kind of a legend in Santa Barbara, and then started his own project, the Ojai Vineyard, which he just makes an array of beautiful wines from that area if you want to taste through that area. And Pierce's disease is kind of a serious issue. We haven't talked a lot about it today, but that is what a lot of the UC Davis grape breeding is focusing on, because Beyond Organic Wine is made possible entirely by subscribers, and the rest of this episode is available for subscribers to the Beyond Organic Wine Substack only. You can subscribe easily at beyondorganicwine.substack.com or at the Substack app. Thank you so much, and a big thanks to Matt Wood of the Indie Wine Podcast for helping record the audio for this episode at the Embracing Hybrid Grapes conference, and a big thanks to Colton Pro for this beautiful closing music.